Welcome to the Oddity Shop, where the bizarre is always on sale.
Hey, welcome in, you oddballs. This is the Oddity Shop with your favorite hosts, Kara and Zach.
But I'm always the favorite. Kara, you can be second favorite.
I'll take it. What do we do here?
This is the podcast where we tell you, usually once a week, creepy, odd, weird stories from around the world. But we got a doubleheader this week because do you know what fucking day it is?
My favorite day ever?
Our favorite day ever?
More mine.
It's probably more yours. But it's fucking Halloween, everybody. So hopefully, if you're listening to this on Halloween, you're having a spooky day. If you're listening to this after Halloween, I still hope you have a spooky day.
You should always have just like a little bit of spook in your day, no matter what.
Exactly. All right, Kara, what do you got for us? Anything fun, anything exciting? What are you doing for Halloween?
Well, on Halloween, I think I probably have to work, but I'm going to a Halloween party, which you might tentatively be my date. You haven't told me yet. I bought thinking. our mom something, Denise. Look how cute this is. I know you guys can't see it, but they're little cups and they have David, which is her cat, on it.
Oh my God.
And it says, creepin' me out. Me out.
She is going to love that.
I saw them and I was like, Denise needs these.
Perfect.
It's her little familiar on a coffee cup. Need it.
She does. She will be drinking out of them, I was going to say every morning, but every morning until they're gone.
Yeah.
All right. You know what I got for you?
What do you have for me?
I've got a special guest. Since this is our Halloween bonus episode, we have not only Blue's Clues noises, but we have a paranormal investigator with us today, somebody who's been out in the field seeing all the creepy shit firsthand.
Not pretending like us.
Yeah, no, we just retell stories. This guy gets them firsthand. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam, who is our special guest today. How's it going, Adam?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you guys having me. I've been listening to the show for a while, and I love everything that y'all have been doing, and it's an honor to be on your show.
Awesome, man. No, we're the ones who are happy.
We're honored.
Yeah, we're honored. We're happy to have you here. Kara kind of alluded to it earlier. You're getting that firsthand experience, and we cannot wait to hear what you have to say. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am a paranormal investigator, and I've been having paranormal experiences ever since I was a child. And I think when you're a kid, a lot of people just pass it off as having an overactive imagination.
Mm-hmm.
My theory is that the younger that you are and the older that you are, the more thin the veil is, or the closer to the veil that you happen to be. And I definitely had a lot of experiences when I was young. And as I kind of got older and into my teen years and into my 20s, I think kind of get distracted by the world and having different experiences. And some of my paranormal experiences and those kinds of things kind of fell by the wayside. And then after I got out of the military, I started exploring my spirituality a little bit more. And that's really when I started having a lot more paranormal experiences. And some of them were so intense and were so obvious that I actually started meeting with a priest on a regular basis. And I met with two different priests. I would meet maybe once a week, every other week. But I did that for about 2 years, just learning how to manage my different experiences and trying to put them into some sort of spiritual context. And most of my experiences and paranormal experience were really kind of psychic in nature. I refer to myself as clairsentient just because I don't have any other word or term to put on that. And that was the way I really kind of experienced the spiritual and the paranormal world around me was through my clairsentience and just kind of like these psychic connections that for a long time I wasn't able to control and were actually really quite intrusive. But as time went on and as the more I practiced meditation, I was able to kind of learn to control these different experiences I have. And now, unfortunately, I'm at a point where I can kind of turn them on or off.
Oh, that's awesome. I love the clairsentience, right? Because I feel like there's so many different clair types.
Can we give a definition for those that don't know what that means?
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the dictionary definition would be.
Well,
but
to
I
you.
know clair. Yeah, clair is a word that means clear. And I think it's a French word, if I'm not mistaken. But, all the different five senses have an associated clair where you can perceive things but kind of in a psychic way. And clairsentience is not necessarily seeing things or hearing things. And I've certainly have had those kind of experiences in the past, although they're much more rare. But to me, clairsentience is more of a feeling and of a sudden knowing. And it's a way that I can perceive energy in an environment. It's very hard to explain. It's almost like explaining what a color would be like to a blind man, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I can get a very clear feeling as to different types of energy, whether they're heavy, whether they're light, whether they're sad, whether they're intrusive. And for a while, I just thought maybe I'm just sensitive or overly emotional. But as my different kind of spiritual and paranormal experiences occurred, I was able to correlate my clairsentience with real happenings. So after a while, kind of developed more into like almost like a warning sign or a warning signal for other potential things that might happen or other potential things that I might experience.
Interesting.
Ooh.
So like your own builtin warning system. A
little bit, yeah. Especially the more that I'm able to really kind of control it and be able to turn that off and on.
That's really cool. The off and on, like the switch to me is the coolest thing that people can control, that kind of stuff. Zach and I talk about that all the time, is like, if you can only like hone in on whatever it is that you want to hone in on, and then like on and off switch.
And I think
that's really cool.
That shows a mastery of yourself, whatever, clairvoyant or
clairsentient.
Yeah. So
I might be mispronouncing it.
I'm going to say ability so I don't mess it up. To master the ability that you have, or the sixth sense almost, to be able to turn it on or off, shows that you've really kind of done your research and that self-learning, right?
Awareness.
To really start to control it. So awesome, man.
Yeah, it took a while to get there. I've been meditating and practicing different forms of spirituality for years and years. So it took a long time to get there. And for a long time, that was really the only way that I had perceived the spiritual world around me. And then about a year ago, I had met who now is a very close group of friends, but I had met a group of paranormal investigators, and they were doing things like how you see on TV with the spirit boxes and the EMF meters and other types of ways of, for lack of a better word, trying to, scientifically quantify and experience. Yeah. And to me, that was very new because my experience was one of some sort of a psychic connection. But this group of people kind of took me under their wing, and over the last year, they have been teaching me different techniques and different types of equipment, and it's really opened up my world as far as how I perceive these kinds of experiences and how I'm able to use my clairsentience in a way to have more kind of like concrete or firm interactions with these energies, whatever they are in the environment.
Well, I'm sure too, using like tools like that, if you call them tools, I would, but I'm sure that brings validation to your like senses that you're feeling, like to actually have like devices that are going off, like when you're feeling that type of stuff. I'm sure that gives you validation as well. So that's awesome.
It does. Yeah. It's really quite affirming, especially when you're able to use the devices. Well, I don't know to use them, but like, so the devices will respond in a way that demonstrates some sort of intelligence. It might be a better way to say.
Better, yeah.
So when you're walking into a haunted location, what do you lean more towards? Is it that innate clairsentience ability, or are you leaning in towards the tools, or is it some sort of combination of both of them?
Over the last year, it's really become a combination of the two. When I first start out, I really focus on the clairsentience, kind of spiritual psychic stuff. I'll do some grounding work and some centering work, and I'll do some energy work, and I'll try to get into like a slightly altered state of consciousness, not to suggest like I'm intoxicated, but kind of go into like a meditative state where your brain waves change a little bit. When you're able to kind of center your energy and to center it and to ground yourself. And to me, that's one of the most important first steps. And I think that it's one step that unfortunately some paranormal investigators don't always tap into for whatever reason or another. And it's not everyone's flavor, right? So there's different ways of doing things for different people.
So when you're doing this type of stuff, like you just said, do you have like a mantra that you're like saying in your head to get you into this stuff? Or is it different? Is it different every time because it's like a different feeling every time?
the energy work that I do is the same over and over and over again. I do things loosely based on the order, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn system. So I have certain formulas and rituals that are the same over and over and over again. But from there, once I'm done with that kind of work, I usually will just talk to the spirits, and that's just free flow. That's just like talking to a person. And that's one thing that you have to get used to if you're going to do this kind of stuff, is seemingly talking to yourself, right? Or at least talking to something that may or may not be there in the room.
Yeah.
I can imagine what other people might hear if they walk up on me, some guy talking to himself in the corner, right?
Right. But here's the thing. It's kind of like talking on the phone, right? Like, somebody's there, but you can't see them. It's kind of the same concept. Like, I think people think it's weird, right? Like, you're just talking to yourself, but come on, we all talk to ourselves anyway.
Yeah, I guess we have those moments.
Yeah. But I'm like, I know somebody's on that other end.
Yeah, I don't know. You don't always know whether someone's on the other end of the phone. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, right?
Yeah.
So it can be hit or miss.
I'll just pretend I'm on my phone.
Also, just a side note, and our listeners know this because we tell them all the time, we are recorded in the future. The pit that I just got in my stomach when you said Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Adam, we have an episode coming out today where I briefly mention them. So when we're wrapped up here,
I was waiting.
You're going to have to, or it's coming out tomorrow. You're going to have to listen to that one and tell me what I got right and tell me what I got wrong. Give me a little education afterwards. Maybe we'll have like a correction corner on the next episode.
Oh, well, we could, but you also did say that come on.
Fair.
Give yourself a little grace. You did give yourself, like, I don't know. You did the research as much as you could.
About 6 hours.
And you're not an expert.
And you know what? I'm not an expert either. The system is so complicated and so in depth. What I do just barely scratches the surface.
I'm sure even like on them alone, we could do a couple part episode because it's just such an interesting.
I'm sure
interesting society. But awesome, man. So I know Kara and I usually have a question for each other, but looks like you are kind of grinding at the bit to ask us one.
I do have a question for you all.
Ooh.
Have you ever heard of Eloise Asylum?
Kara, I'll let you go first.
So I have not. I've only heard of it because Zach has mentioned it, but I've actually not technically heard of it or like looked into it or know anything about it.
I have a little bit of knowledge. I grew up not super far from there. I never got the opportunity because I was like a really, really good kid growing up, at least to a certain age, right? But when I was like younger, I had friends who would sneak in there and try to have experiences. Mm-hmm. So I got some firsthand knowledge, but I know a little bit about it. I know nothing about the history. All I know is that it's a haunted place here in our grand state of Michigan. So I'm sure you're going to tell us maybe a little bit about it today.
Your face was so funny. Like a little kid. Like,
I'm excited.
Yes,
I'm excited.
You know, a lot of people have snuck into Eloise Asylum. That's not an uncommon thing that I hear. But Eloise is known as one of the most haunted locations in not only Michigan, but one of the most haunted locations in America. And over the last several months has turned into one of my most favorite places to investigate. It's now an abandoned insane asylum, and that's probably what it's most well known for. But at one time, it was actually one of the largest and most advanced medical facilities in the country. And a lot of people are surprised to learn that it actually started in Detroit as a poorhouse.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, it started in the 1880s in Detroit, or at the time what was known as a part of Hamtramck. And even back at the time, there was laws on the county book that required the county and different government agencies to take care of the poor. So Wayne County had set up what was referred to as the Wayne County Poorhouse. And this is a place where the poor and the homeless could go to seek shelter. But as you can imagine, back in the 1880s, there wasn't a lot of infrastructure and management in place. So the facility kind of quickly fell into ruin. And eventually it was given to a Catholic priest, a guy by the name of Father Kundig. And he was considered in Detroit to be like the apostle of charity. And he did the best he could to take care of the people who live there and to take care of the facility and to maintain it to the best of his abilities. But eventually the place just kind of fell into ruin, and they decided that they were going to have to move. And that's when they decided to move to their current location, which at the time was referred to as Nankin Township. And that's where it's at now. And the reason why they chose that location is because it was right along Michigan Avenue, which at the time was referred to as the Chicago Road, which just happens to be one of the oldest continually human transverse trails in the world.
Really?
This trail has been used for as long as like Native American history is aware of it. It's been around a long, long time.
Okay, I grew up not far from Eloise, but where the hell is Nankin Township? Like, I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Never.
Nankin Township is now Inkster, Garden City, and Westland.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, I'm utterly confused. Which is not hard.
No.
If you were ever in Hines Park, like in the Garden City area, there's a little museum called the Nantucket Mill. And that kind of talks about some of the history of the, how the township started.
Interesting.
Wow.
Okay, cool. Look at that. We're already learning, and we haven't even gotten to spooky stuff yet.
Holy moly.
Yeah, the history is fascinating. That was one of the big reasons why they chose that spot, is they had Michigan Avenue or the Chicago Road is what it was called then. And then right on the south side of that was a set of railroad tracks. And then even further south to that was the Rouge River. So you had water access, rail access, and water access. And that's kind of why they decided on this spot. And plus it was in the middle of nowhere. They bought a couple of 100 acres for about $800.
Damn, that'd be nice.
But the building that was originally on there that they bought was called the Black Horse Tavern. That's the building that was originally bought, and it was a stagecoach stop that was between Detroit and Chicago. So it was about a 2-day.
Is that a bar now?
It is a bar somewhere. I was looking it up, and there's somewhere in Michigan called like the Black Horse Tavern. I don't know if they named it after that or not.
I've never been there, but I've heard of that. Okay. So I was like, maybe there is a bar around there that they named that.
A bar on that side of the state you haven't been to? I'm proud.
Denise.
His mother is not going to save you right now.
No,
I bought her a gift.
She's probably listening to the episode going, I've been to that bar.
Honestly. Love her. Love you, Denise. Anyway.
This bar is long gone. It has not been there in a very long time. So.
Oh, then let me not age my mother.
You got a flux capacitor,
Denise, I love you.
You have just been taken off of her Halloween list, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Do you feel the most powerful and beautiful with the elements of the earth around you? Do you like one-of-a-kind jewelry? Do you sometimes feel like a woodland fairy? Me too. That's why I created Holly and Hemlock, a magical shop filled with handmade wooden jewelry and metaphysical tools. Come check out our enchanting wooden wares at www.hollyhemlock.com and join us in honoring the magic and beauty of nature with each unique creation. That's www.hollyhemlock.com.
I didn't do anything. I love her. I bought her a present.
All right.
Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program.
But that bar was just a couple of little log cabins that was connected by a breezeway. And that was the only building that was there. They got that building, and they got some livestock, and they got some seeds, all for about $800.
That's insane.
I know. Well, inflation, $800 doesn't take you quite as far as what it did a couple hundred years ago. But that was what the keeper's house was. So they turned that place into the keeper's house, and they built another little building right next door that housed the poor. And, back in the day, they didn't have any distinction between the mentally ill, the poor, or whatever the case was. They just put everybody in the same building. And then eventually, as time went on, the mentally ill population had gotten so big that they eventually built a dedicated building on site just for the mentally ill. And then as time went on, the facility just grew and grew and grew, and it got really big with all sorts of buildings and hundreds of acres. They actually produced all of their own food. There was a farm there, even from the beginning. There was this idea that people who were mentally ill or who were poor would have some positive efficacy and experience some, just positive life stuff if they were given an opportunity to be productive, right? So they were required to work the farm and to have different jobs and chores, all in accordance with their disease and their abilities. So different people had different things depending on what they were able to do. But everybody worked between like 4 and 6 hours, and the farm really ramped up in the 1880s. They had greenhouses, root cellars, a piggery, a hennery for eggs and chickens. They had a blacksmith shop. They had managers' cottages where they could bring in specialists in all of these different areas to help guide the different parts of the farm, and they could live there. They even grew all of their own tobacco and had a tobacco drying barn.
Of course.
And they did. They made their own cigarettes, and that's what they gave to the inmates to smoke. And their brand of cigarettes was called luxury tobacco cigarette. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because when you first start to say like they had the farm and everything for self-sufficiency, it almost takes me to like Waverly Hills where they did that sort of stuff. I believe I could be wrong. When you first hear that, right, you almost think of that as if we're self-sufficient, then we can hide this population away from the world. But it's cool to get that different perspective that you brought up of it's like, I don't want to say enrichment because it sounds like a hamster in a fucking cage, and that's not the right way.
It's probably like it's kind of forward thinking, right? That you're at least trying to rehabilitate these people and like give them something to. I keep looking for my book. It almost reminds me of the Traverse City State Asylum when they first. I can't remember what the quote was, but it was like beauty is like power. I can't remember. And they tried to make everything beautiful because it's kind of the same thing. Like where they're like, all right, if you have like give you something to do, maybe we'll stabilize your mind, things like that. I wish I could remember what the quote is, but that's kind of forward thinking. I'm hoping that it stayed that way.
Well, it wasn't always that way. When it first started, a lot of the buildings had cells in the basement, and they didn't know what to do with people who were severely mentally ill, and they would literally just chain people in a cell in the basement to the wall and just kind of forget about you. Once upon a time, they just didn't have any understanding of mental health or disorders, and they had no idea how to treat it. There was a lot of ideas back then where everything was some sort of they were unsaved. They were capable of being saved, or they weren't capable of being treated, or maybe they had some sort of like spiritual or demonic influence. But regardless, we just didn't know what to do with people for a long, long time.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, and up until the 1880s, the keeper, or kind of like the director of Eloise, wasn't even a doctor. They were just local farmers.
Oh no.
They were people who just volunteered.
Oh my God.
Yeah. They were just people who volunteered to take this post.
I mean, power to them, but man.
Well, they did it out of completely selfish means, because this was an opportunity to get their name out there and to become well known. So people would use this as a stepping stone to state politics and stuff like that. And they only had doctors maybe come out to the facility once or twice a week. And, doctors would come from Detroit or from Wayne or from some other faraway place. And finally, in 1881, a law was passed saying that the director or the keeper actually had to be a licensed medical doctor.
Probably a good move.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah, and and the farmers who were doing this before the doctor, they had like zero training in medicine or in homeless populations or in mental disorders, even in accordance with their understanding of things at the time. They had zero training, which is one reason why people were treated so poorly. But the very first ever doctor who was put in position there in 1881, his name was Dr. E.O. Bennett, and he actually really did try to do something to help the mentally ill. And just like you had said, Kara, he had this idea where if you could make the grounds aesthetically pleasing and beautiful, that might have some benefit or some sort of positive efficacy. So he really did a lot with landscaping and growing plants. They had a bunch of greenhouses so they could start all their own shrubs and ornamentals. And he was actually the guy that went through and decided he was going to get rid of all of the chains. So he went through all of the different buildings and took out the chains, and then whatever building the chains were removed from, the chains were just buried right there in the earth. So somewhere on all the campus, there is just all of these chains. And in my opinion, that's one reason why I think there's lots of reasons why there's still so much energy there.
Yeah.
but even all of that stuff was just buried and is still in the earth.
I have goosebumps.
Is there a reason for burying rather than disposing?
I think that's just was their way of disposing back then, right? Like,
yeah,
they didn't have modern landfills, so they were just like, we'll just bury our trash.
Fair.
I'm guessing.
Fair enough.
I mean, I guess it could be therapeutic. Like fair enough. Like you're just burying away the I don't know, but that seems a little sketchy.
Seems almost ritualistic.
I know, I don't like it.
Well, I don't think he was out there doing it in a robe underneath the full moon or anything, but
no.
At least I hope not. But I don't know. I don't know the guy very well.
We think he was trying.
He really tried to do things to help the patient. And he started doing what at the time was considered to be kind of like groundbreaking treatments. Music therapy. Eloise is well known for pioneering music therapy that went on. It's gone on to be a thing that you can go to any major university and get a degree in. And they were one of the pioneering people who did that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they were really groundbreaking in like physical therapy, occupational therapy, and just trying to do things to engage the patients as opposed to just leaving them in a hole in the ground like some sort of animal. But they also had some treatments that, even though were technologically advanced for the time, in hindsight through a modern lens, are considered to be kind of barbaric. And in my opinion, when we look at history, I think it's important to try to look at history through the lens with which people at the time saw things. Because if we always try to put things through a lens in our modern view, it can kind of skew things. So
yeah.
Even some of the things that they were doing back then, like insulin shock therapy and electroshock therapy, hydrotherapy, lobotomies. In hindsight, a lot of these treatments were barbaric and just not effective. But at the time, they thought this was groundbreaking medicine, and they were really trying to do something legitimately to help these people. Because from their perspective at the time, they were finally, for the first time ever in history, trying to employ some sort of scientific methodology to help people as opposed to just leaving them in a cell in the ground. But of course, when we look at it from 2023, it's like, oh my God, how could you do this? Right.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like you said, without like looking through the historical lens, you look back and you're like, wow, these people were just like science experiments almost.
Well, and I think it is a case by case, right? So like if we're talking about, what was his name? Dr. E.O. Bennett, I think like what you're telling us is that he really was trying, but there are some cases where they're like, yeah, lobotomy, everybody needs a lobotomy, and it's like scary. But yeah, I think it definitely is one of those things where it's like really hard to take yourself out of our lens here. But I agree with you. You do have to try to like have a little bit of an understanding for that time, which does seem really wild and barbaric now. But either way, it's extremely fascinating.
Yeah, Eloise kind of actually got into the lobotomy game a little bit late. They only did about 34 lobotomies there in total. The vast majority were female patients.
Of course.
Well,
thanks.
Again, you want to look through things through a historical lens. When the Traverse State Psychiatric Facility was finally up and running and seeing patients, this was at a time in history where there was preferential medical treatment towards women because they were deemed as being kind of the more fragile gender and the more worthy of saving. So the state facility in Traverse would only take, well, not only, but they had a preference. They had a preference for taking female patients and only female patients who had a very high chance of recovery. So if you were not that, you ended up at these other places like Eloise. And if you were a female patient at Eloise, you were going to, in their view, get the best of the most, scientifically advanced treatments of the time to try to do something with some sort of positive efficacy, which they perceived as one of those things they perceived was being so effective was a lobotomy, which is why most of the 34 lobotomies were on female patients. And the very first female patient at Eloise to get a lobotomy was a stripteaser. She was considered to be a sexual deviant, and that was their way of trying to cure her perceived sexual immorality.
I do love looking at those,
God.
like the 1800 lists of what they considered to be mental disorders, that today we'd just be like, oh, you're just a subculture of like, you know, normal life at large.
But it's so horrifying when you think of it now. Like, I know we're not looking at it in our lens, but it's like, it's wild when you read that stuff, like you just said, Zach. Like, you're like laughing, but then you're like, oh shit, like people really went through that. Oh my God. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know how many lobotomies we're doing doing anymore. I don't think that's, you know, the common practice. I think we have new ways of doing things.
Yeah.
I know, like in the 1920s is when psychopharmaceuticals really came out, and finally we were able to medicate people.
Yeah.
And that's when everything really started changing, is when we were able to start using psychopharmaceuticals to try to control these different illnesses. And that's when all the other kind of quote unquote barbaric things stopped, you know, all the hydrotherapy and all of that kind of stuff.
Wild.
Yeah, you want to know what else is wild is how Eloise got most of their drinking water for a long time.
Oh
no. Do I want to know?
So do you know who Bishop Foley is? There's a high school in Metro
Yes.
Detroit named after
I
him.
know the name of the school. The name rings a bell.
Yeah,
I
I don't
couldn't tell you
know
a thing more about him.
Mm-mm.
So he was the bishop of one of the Detroit dioceses back at the time, late 1800s. But across the street from Eloise, right on the south side of Michigan Avenue, between Michigan Avenue and where the railroad tracks are, was a Catholic cemetery. And Eloise, ever since their beginning, was kind of challenged with getting enough drinking water. Wells would go dry and all of that kind of stuff. So what they did is they bought this cemetery from Bishop Foley, and shame on Bishop Foley for selling them the cemetery, but they disinterred all of the bodies, dug the cemetery out.
Oh my God.
I know, right? Dug a well hundreds of feet deep and then made a lake and then reinterred the bodies in an island in the middle of the lake. And this is the
How have
lake.
I never heard of this?
It's one of those things people don't like to talk about, you know, Eloise Asylum being like
I want to
fueled
talk
with
about
like
it.
dirty body, like grave water. Yeah. So this is the water that they use for cooking, bathing, hygiene, cooking, cleaning, washing clothes, everything. And then
I thought
once the facility got bigger, they needed even more water. So what did they do with this island in the middle that had all the bodies? They disinterred all the bodies a second time, dug out the island, and filled in the lake even more.
I thought the chains.
I would need a lobotomy as well.
I thought the chains are where we were getting the ghosts. Maybe, you know, moving bodies laid to rest twice now for your drinking water.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't know what would be worse, like that or drinking the water from that water tower in the Cecil Hotel.
Oh,
both are pretty.
Yeah.
Oh, that really trips me up. Really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I want to die thinking about both of those. I'm very picky about my water.
There's going to be nothing but bottled water from now on for you. And they even would harvest ice off of this thing.
Nope.
They did, and then they kept it in an ice house. This was before refrigeration.
Oh my goodness.
I'm absolutely dead.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, things are sort of starting to make sense now on why it is the way that it is.
Oh my God. Chains and dead body water. Yeah, I'd haunt that place too. Oh my God. I'm sorry. There
it was the snort. I feel honored now. I was two in a row.
She's just gonna keep losing it over this. You're just gonna have to get on to the next point, or she's gonna stay like this for like 5 or 10.
Whew, I'm good.
Okay, all right. I'll talk about the Potter's Field.
Okay.
All right, so speaking of cemeteries, at one time, you know, because like now people have an option of donating their body to science, and that's one of the way that medical schools get cadavers so that folks can practice medicine, right? Well, once upon a time, there wasn't these laws. And when folks were buried, medical students from Wayne State and from the University of Michigan and other law schools, they would come and they would steal the bodies, and they would dig up the bodies and they would steal them, and that's what they used for cadavers in medical school. And Eloise wasn't immune from that problem. In fact, Eloise had its own cemetery that they buried patients who had passed in the facility and went unclaimed, because this place was massive, right? It was its own city. It had its own zip code, produced all of its own food. So a lot of people pass away in this city. And between 1910 and 1948, they had approximately 7,100 deaths where the patients who passed away either didn't have any funeral plans, couldn't afford a funeral, or the family never claimed the body. So they buried all of these folks in what's referred to as a potter's field. And I don't like saying the exact location of where this cemetery is at now, because I don't want people going out there and exploring and vandalizing.
Yeah, I wouldn't
But
either.
it is very close to the current grounds, and all of those bodies are still there. There's about 7,100 of them that's still buried out there. That's
wild.
Why do they call it a potter's field?
Well, because you're just potting bodies, like potting.
Kara.
That's a good question for Google. I'm not sure why they call it a potter's field.
As soon as you were saying that, I was thinking of like potting plants, potting bodies.
Potting bodies out there. Seeing if little hands will sprout up. Haunted hands, zombie hands.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Yikes. I'm canceled.
I don't know why they call it potter's field, but I know that term isn't unique to Eloise.
Okay.
Like, I've heard it in other contexts. Like, a potter's field is basically just a government-run cemetery where they bury poor folks, right?
Fair enough. Kara's on the Google, so while we're waiting for that definition.
Okay, but Eloise wasn't all bad. They did some of the very first X-rays. One of their bookkeepers designed an X-ray machine based on the original X-rays that were being created in Germany, and then the X-ray machine was huge. It took up like 3 rooms, but it revolutionized medicine, especially at Eloise. It was one of the very first X-ray machines anywhere in the States. So they were bringing people in all over the place. That X-ray machine is actually still in storage in Detroit, and they will occasionally loan it out to museums.
That's cool.
Yeah. It also had...
Sorry, I'm wrong. I'm sad.
Of course you're wrong. It's not they're planting bodies. As cute of an idea as that is.
Of course you're wrong. Okay, a potter's field was originally a space where poor people were buried. In biblical times, priests bought clay-rich land owned by pot makers for their burial grounds.
Wow, interesting.
I like my theory better.
Yours definitely has more intrigue, that is for sure. It certainly makes for a better story.
Oh my god.
We're learning so much today.
You want to learn one other more interesting fact? Have you ever heard of the phrase, the real McCoy?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you ever wondered where that came from?
Is Hatfields and McCoys? I always thought that.
No, Elijah McCoy was the son of freed slaves. And he got a job on a railroad back in the day when the engines were coal-fired, right? And it was an incredibly brutal job. You would have to shovel almost 2 tons of coal per hour into the fire chamber. And it was a terrible job. And then one of the other things that he would have to do is that he would have to stop the shoveling to lubricate and oil different pieces of the engine. And he created a special device to be able to lubricate these parts of the train while the train was still in motion. And he went on to holding a bunch of different patents, but this was considered to be a revolutionary device in the rail industry because they were able to lubricate stuff so quickly. And the design and the invention became really high demand, and a lot of other manufacturers started making their version of it, but their version of it was really cheap and would fall apart. So when these different railroads were looking for this lubrication device, they would ask, is this the real McCoy? Because they wanted the one that was actually made by McCoy that was of good quality. So the real McCoy, yeah.
I was so wrong.
And he was admitted to Eloise in his later years for senile dementia. And he spent his last years in Eloise, and he is one of Eloise's more famous patients.
Shut up and look at that tie-in right there. I thought we were just getting random tidbits.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
He also invented the folding ironing board and the lawn sprinkler.
What a genius.
I know.
And then he got dementia. Oh, that's so sad. And then he forgot all of it.
Yeah, and he passed away at Eloise. Yeah, but there's some other interesting folks who spent time at Eloise as well. There was one person, and her name was, let me see if I can find it here. Her name was Laura Partridge. And I first learned about Laura Partridge when I was doing a spirit box session up on the 4th floor. Have you all heard of a spirit box?
Yeah, Kara got me one for my birthday. Yeah. But we want to hear you talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's tell our listeners what it is in case they're not familiar.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, a spirit box is a device. It's made by DOS distributors. It's the same company that actually produces the REM pod. But the spirit box is a modified radio that cycles through different radio stations. And the spirit box is unique in the sense that when it cycles through the different radio stations, that very small gap between each radio station when it's supposed to cycle, as opposed to there being silence, it introduces a proprietary white noise to fill in that gap. So as it cycles through the different radio stations, you have this kind of perpetual static. And the theory or the idea is that spirits can communicate to you through the white noise. And the idea is that you can set this thing to cycle through the different radio stations. And if you can ask it questions and then get intelligent responses in return, it might demonstrate that you're communicating with something that's intelligent.
That is a much better description than we would have given.
Thank you, because our description, our listeners are probably laughing, was it's a little radio and it goes and
then it does make a train noise. It does. It does make like a chewing kind of a noise. It is what it sounds like.
So that was a great description.
And like when some people will use the spirit box and they'll just kind of like listen to the words that come through. But really its value comes in is when you're able to go into a meditative trance and develop a psychic connection with the energies around you, and then use that white noise as a communication device while you're in that meditative or like that trance-like state. And then there's something else called the Estes method. Have you heard of the Estes method before?
It's our favorite.
Is it?
Yes, we have.
For listeners who don't know what the Estes method is, you've heard of the Stanley Hotel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The Stanley Hotel is the hotel that inspired Stephen King to write The Shining, and it is located in Estes Park. And a group of investigators had gone to the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, and then kind of developed this technique that's now very well known and referred to as the Estes method. But it involves somebody using the spirit box while wearing noise-canceling headphones and a blindfold, sensory deprivation. And then another person will ask questions, and the person who's using the spirit box don't know what questions are being asked because of the headphones and the blindfold. But they continue to say whatever words come across through the static. And the idea is that you have one person asking a question, and then hopefully this the person using the spirit box can give intelligent answers.
So I'm always going to bring it back to Sam and Colby.
Always.
Now I need to fact check everybody, because they had a man on, and I cannot remember his name, but he claimed to create this method. But you're saying it's a park.
Estes Park, yeah, which is where the Stanley Hotel is at.
The guy who created it, Kara, is also the producer of the Haunted Objects podcast. He who is on Sam and Colby.
Okay. I thought I just got lied to by Sam and Colby.
No, maybe he is the guy. I don't know the guy's name.
I want to say with like 80% certainty it's Carl or Connor.
You might be right, but maybe he named it after the park. Whatever. As long as Sam and Colby aren't lying to me.
You're okay.
Okay.
You can trust Sam and Colby. They're good. But whatever this gentleman's name is, he now kind of like lives in infamy in the paranormal investigation world. This is definitely a go-to technique
for sure
for a lot of people. And I was using this technique in Eloise, in one of the buildings that currently is still standing. It's called the K Beard building, or the D building. It's the big building that's still there on campus. And we're up on the 4th floor in the bathtub. And it's, for those of you who may have watched Jack Osborne's Portal to Hell episode where he visited Eloise, they kind of focused on this bathroom and in this apartment. It was actually a private apartment that was up on the 4th floor, and either a resident physician or a chaplain would stay in these private apartments. But we were in the bathtub, and we were doing a spirit box session, and one of my fellow investigators was sitting in the bathtub, and she's the one who had on the headphones, and we were asking questions and trying to get a name. And she had given us the name Ephraim, was the name that she had given us. And then she had also kind of said some things that kind of reference like cold and water and lake and, those kinds of things. And we didn't think much of it. We were just kind of thinking these are unintelligent responses. It's just a bunch of babble. So we ended up closing out the session and calling it a day. And I don't even remember what else we went on to go do that day. But later that evening, or maybe the next day, I was digging and I was searching for this name Ephraim. And I found the obituary for a Miss Laura Partridge, and the husband's name was Ephraim.
That's insane.
Back in the day, women would take on the husband's name. And Laura Partridge was a school teacher. She was actually a teacher at the school at Eloise. Ever since the beginning, Eloise had a school to be able to educate the children that were there. And she was a school teacher. And even before she was married, and even before she was a school teacher, she had some mental health issues. She was actually admitted to the Grosse Pointe Psychiatric Hospital, was discharged, eventually married, became a school teacher at Eloise, and then had another mental breakdown and was admitted to the facility. And she ended up escaping, going to the cemetery, the creepy cemetery lake across the street, and committed suicide by drowning.
Oh, and that's how you were getting water and lake. Oh my God.
I think so.
Wow.
I think so.
Okay, that gave me chills.
So we were able to use that spirit box session to learn more about a person who's actually a patient there. But the most interesting part is that she committed suicide in 1903, but we're in the K Beard building, which was not built until about 1939. So she had actually passed before this particular building was constructed, but she was a patient somewhere in Eloise in one of the psychiatric buildings.
Wow.
So it's very interesting that we were able to make contact with her in the building, even though she was not necessarily in that building. And it almost kind of seems as like that one building that's still left there on the complex, it almost acts as like a beacon for other energies or ghosts, right? It's almost like a truck stop on the interstate, it seems as though, for things even that are passing through, or for other energies that may be somewhere on the ground. This is like a place to congregate or a place to try to communicate, it seems.
Do you have a thought as to why?
I don't know. I mean, I have some thoughts as to maybe why Eloise in general holds on to a lot of energy. Eloise is mostly made out of brick, which is fired clay. Earth elements tend to hold on to etheric energy.
Yeah.
And also there's all of these tunnels that run underneath Eloise that at one point in time that had connected the different, all the different buildings in the complex, and they're all flooded and stuff and full of water and, running water, etheric energy. So kind of have some thoughts as to why things may congregate there. But as far as Laura specifically, I don't know why she decided to show up in that bathtub and chat with us. So, but there's definitely a very kind of dominant, oppressive, kind of angry male energy that we will constantly run up to on that floor. I was investigating that floor actually just last week with one of my fellow investigators who is clairsentient as well, but she's much more sensitive than I am and is much more in tune with her, with that kind of stuff. And we were on the day room in the 4th floor, and we were seeing flashes of light on the wall. And this was dark. This was in the middle of the night. It's like 1:00 in the morning. And we were trying to debunk reasons why we may have been seeing like these orbs on the wall. We were talking about maybe passing cars and it shining in the window. But we're all up on the 4th floor and there's not a lot of traffic in the parking lot. So we're kind of going through things about why these lights. And then all of a sudden she says, I can feel or sense something on the floor over to my right. And she says, there's something crawling on the floor.
No.
Oh, no.
And then all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see something on the floor. And at that exact same moment, something pushed into my back and actually touched me and laid on my shoulders. And that was a very, very creepy experience to be able to see something, then have something physically reach out and touch you.
Was it like malicious feeling or just like...
No, it didn't feel malicious. It didn't necessarily feel innocent either. It almost felt like someone were to drape a wet bath towel over your shoulders. It was that kind of like heavy pressing down type of feeling.
Not just like a light touch. Like that's got weight and force behind it. Like there's no way you just made that up in your head or whatever. Not saying that you would, but like...
Israeli Regarde, who was Aleister Crowley's secretary, and he went on to be a psychologist, but he said that there's a very fine line between psychology and magic.
I can vibe with that.
Yeah, even in the Kabbalion, one of the tenets of Hermeticism is that reality is mental.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how these energies communicate with us and how they manipulate our psychology to be able to establish contact. I don't know how that works. I wish I knew how it works, but I don't know. There's certainly something going on. There's something in Eloise that likes to reach out and touch people. That is a place that definitely likes to establish physical contact. Eloise is definitely a place where its energies will reach out and touch you. There's definitely something in there that likes to establish physical contact. I was there several weeks ago, and there was 2 other people who were on the 3rd floor in the nursing station, and they were doing spirit box session. And all of a sudden, the mother, it was a mother and a daughter who was up there doing an investigation, and the mother said that she had something suddenly reach out and touch her hand and cut her on the thumb. And on the same time, her daughter claimed to have something scratch her on her leg. And her thumb was bleeding. She needed a Band-Aid, and there was clearly something on her daughter's leg.
Oh, my God.
And then, so I gave her a Band-Aid, and I says, my name is Adam. If there's anything that you need, just let me know. And as soon as I said that, their jaws dropped and they looked at each other. And I was like, do I have bad breath? Right? Do my right guard, did my right guard take a left turn? And they look at me and they go, what's your name again? I says, my name is Adam. And they said, right before this happened, the spirit box was saying the name Adam.
No. Oh, my hair is standing straight up.
So after they left that area on the 3rd floor, I went down there to see what was going on. I wanted to see if whatever was going on. And so I was walking down the hall, and I was starting to walk towards the nursing station, and something reached out and grabbed my arm. And that was the first time something has ever touched me in that place. And that did not feel like a negative or a bad touch. At the time, it just creeped me out. Like I stopped, I turned around, I was not going any further. But the more that I think about it, I think that something was looking out for me and trying to keep me from going further down there. I think there was something further down there that was malevolent, and something was trying to keep me from going down there, like stopping me.
Oh, man.
Interesting. Like kind of like, grabbing your arm as you walk away. Like,
one saying your name to call you in, and the other one warning. That is, oh, man. Yeah.
But I don't know. That's just kind of what I think. And, I think the more often you go to a haunted location and the more time you spend in the same location, you can build a relationship with the ghosts. Every time I walk into this place, one of the first things I do when I walk in is I start talking, and I'm talking to the ghosts. I talk out loud. I greet them and I talk to them just like I'm a person. And I think they might appreciate that. They might get to know you
I'm sure.
after a while. I was there, it was a couple of months ago now, but I was down on the 1st floor, and I was coming out of a supply closet, and something said my name. And there was other people in the building, and so I fully expected to turn around and see somebody there, maybe somebody know. And I turned around, and there was nobody else in this room. And it's not all that big of a room. And it wasn't like the wind is blowing, you think you may have heard your name. Like, it was very clearly that somebody or something was behind me and said my name in a low volume.
Wow.
And I hear stories about people talking about being touched and people claiming to have their name kind of whispered or spoken. But until you actually experience it, or at least for me, until I experienced it, I never really truly appreciated what that was like and really truly how creepy and unnerving it really is.
So kind of back to what you were saying earlier, like the history and stuff, like all these people were really, well, I don't know if neglected is the correct word, but a lot of them were chained to walls and things like that. No one knew what to do with them, right? So they probably do really, really appreciate the same person coming in over and over again and just like showing them some sort of attention or affection or just like being kind to them. So I'm sure they absolutely love that. So I would imagine they would want to call your name and like hold you back from danger and like really want to build a relationship and hold on to your presence. Like, I can't imagine why they wouldn't.
Yeah. I definitely agree to that. If we subscribe to the theory that they still have some sort of human emotion and intelligence and human cognition, that they probably want that human relationship, right? There's probably still a part of them that's a social creature in some sort of a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they definitely get attached to people. There's one guy I know that will go there every once in a while during an investigation, and the ghosts definitely like him. There's a spot. I like him in a good way. There's a spot up on the second floor. And this building, the K Beard building, it had, when Medicare was introduced in 1965, it really kind of messed up the way that these big organizations were funded. So they lost funding in mid 70s. And by the late 70s, they had moved out all of their patients. And then the building was leased by the state, and they kept seeing patients there actually until the early 80s. And then when the state finally moved out the last of their patients in the early 80s, the county still used the first two floors of the K Beard building for administrative purposes up until like 2016, 2017. So there were still people in there until like very, very recently.
Oh, wow.
And this was all up on the second floor where a lot of this stuff was taking place. And on the second floor is where we get a lot of shadow activity. And I like to use a laser grid. I'll use a laser grid in that area to try to detect some shadow activity. But this one guy that I had mentioned earlier was up there with us, and we always get a lot of activity down at the end of the hall. So we like to set up REM pods in that area. And when he comes into the hall and goes down in there, and not close enough to the REM pod to set it off, but he just kind of has to get into that area. And if you ask questions and ask for something to set the REM pod off, it will turn the REM pod on and off in an intelligent way for this particular person. So
that's so cute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they like this guy, right? So I definitely think your theory totally holds weight, Kara. 100%.
I love it. Oh my god, I can't go. I'd be making way too many friends.
making friends with all the spirits, all the ghosts.
I'm sure that familiarity has to have a part to it, right? Because if not, you have just random groups of people coming and probably going, "Is there anyone here with us? What's your name?" Right? Like, they can only answer that
how
question
annoying.
so many times before they're like, "Oh my god, my buddies are here." It's like going into the bar and seeing your friends.
That's so cute. I love it.
Yeah, it's like imagine having someone come into your front room every 5 minutes and be like, "Hey, what you doing? What's your name?
Right.
Tell me your name." You'd be like, "Oh my god, get out of here."
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd be shouting, "Get out!" too.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I would be such a bitch.
I mean, you kind of already are, but
right. But can you imagine if I was dead and people were interrupting me every 5 seconds? No,
God.
I'd really be a bitch.
Back to you, Adam.
So I do have a couple of more paranormal stories that I could use.
Yeah,
keep going.
Okay. So one of the things that you'll notice when you're in the K Beard building at Eloise is that floors 2, 3, and 4 are kind of carbon copies of itself.
Okay.
It's just the same thing, like over and over and over. And they always put the most seriously or significantly mentally ill people in the very top stories, right? So on the 5th floor, and there is a 6th floor, but it's all like machine rooms and stuff like that. So it was never for patient care. It's just like elevator equipment, and I don't know what other kind of machine equipment they have up there. But the 5th floor was the top floor where they did all of their patient care, and that's where they had the schizophrenics and the bipolar and the most seriously ill of the ill. And the reason why they put them way high up was it was more difficult to escape if you're way high up.
Makes sense.
But the 5th floor, because this is where they had the most seriously of the mentally ill, this is the one floor that looks different than the other floors. So at the end of the one hallway on the 5th floor, they have a procedure room. And to be fair, all the floors had a procedure room because they tried to do as many like small surgical procedures as possible for their patients right there in this building, as opposed to taking them to one of the other buildings. But what's unique about the procedure room on the 5th floor is that they have what's referred to as the surgeon's elevator. And have you all seen the most recent Expedition X episodes where they visited Eloise?
I have not, but
No.
I feel like I have homework now.
Yeah, they're great. I love the Expedition X show, and I think they did a really great job in Eloise. But this is the part that they focused on almost the entire episode, especially on this elevator. And this elevator goes from the 1st floor to the 5th floor, and it doesn't stop anywhere else, just from 1 to 5. And then, so what the surgeon would do is he would get into the elevator on the 1st floor in the lobby. It would take you all the way up to the 5th floor. And then when you get out of the elevator, it's in a little secured area that would be locked. And then once the guards or the attendants or whomever secured the rest of the ward and got all the patients locked in their patient rooms, then the surgeon can come out from his little secure elevator stuff, go right into the procedure room, do whatever procedure they're going to do, and then go back down. Now, one of the things about Eloise is that the building that's still standing, the K. Beard building, because it was there from 1930s, and then they were still seeing patients until the 80s. It was there for a long time, so the history is a little muddled, right? Because they use different rooms and different floors for different things as the years and the decades go by. But we're pretty sure that a lot of the lobotomies and some of the other more kind of procedures that we, in hindsight, being a little barbaric, a lot of them took place up in this particular procedure room. So there's a lot of really kind of heavy energy and stuff that kind of permeates that area. And I was up there, oh God, this has got to have been 5 or 6 months ago now. We were doing an investigation with 2 of my friends, and my one friend that I was with, a fellow investigator, kept seeing shadow figures come in and out of this procedure room and then dart across the hall and go into another doorway. And she was the only one who was seeing it. And not that we disbelieved her. We just, me and the other person, we just weren't experiencing it. So we went on and we were doing whatever, and we were continuing our investigation. And then we were at the clear opposite end of the hallway. And we were kind of walking back towards where this procedure room was because we were trying to get to a stairwell. And then all of a sudden, a shadow just went out of the procedure room, across the hall, and went into another room. And all 3 of us saw it at the exact same time.
That's wild.
When you have 2 other people see it,
yep,
it's affirming.
It's hard to dispute that. Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah. So we decided that we were going to set up a flashlight at the end of the hall. Are you all familiar with what's kind of commonly referred to as the flashlight technique or the flashlight method?
Yes, I love it.
Okay. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy associated with the flashlight technique, but I like the flashlight technique. And the way that I do it is I use a small mini mag, one of those ones that have the head that will turn. And then I'll take a bulldog clip. Have you ever seen like the bulldog clips? It's like a paper binder. It's like the steel clips.
Yeah,
and you can use them.
binder clip,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, binder clip. I don't know why I call them bulldog clips.
I'm sure there's 100 different names.
I like it.
I will clip this thing to the base of the flashlight. That way I can kind of sit the flashlight up at an angle, and the head of the flashlight isn't pressing against the floor or the table. So it's easier to manipulate, right? And then, so what you do from there is you kind of manipulate the head of the flashlight to that liminal state where it's not really off and it's not really on. It's kind of in the middle. And then you try to get the energies to turn the flashlight on and off in accordance with your line of questioning. And if it does it in an intelligent way, it might demonstrate that you've been able to contact something that's willing to communicate intelligently. And we had been having luck with this particular technique previously in the evening. So we're like, well, we're going to set this flashlight up down at the end of the hallway where we saw this shadow. and then we'll all come back down to where we're at now, so we're not like spooking it or whatever, and we'll see if we can get it to communicate. So I set up. It was my friend's flashlight. So we had my friend's flashlight, and then she had like kind of adjusted it and put the clip on. Then after she had it adjusted and put the clip on, I from there took it and walked down to the end of the hall, and I set it down. And then I come back to where everybody else was, and we're like asking questions, and we're not getting any flashlight activity like at all. It's not coming on at all. We're like, okay, well, it's whatever. This is a bust, right? I walk back down there to get the flashlight, and the bulldog clip was completely moved up. So it was simultaneously clipping the screw head of the flashlight down on the base. And I had 2 other investigators confirm that is not the way that we had set that down. So something had physically manipulated the equipment and like moved the way that it was. And of course, we get people whose, batteries drain and other kind of weird stuff. But this was one thing that I experienced in my equipment physically getting moved and manipulated in some sort of a way.
That's incredible.
That to me would be almost more proof than the flashlight turning on if you walk back to something and it's just completely moved from how you left it.
Right.
And if it was just me, I would say to myself, well, maybe I didn't set it up right? But there was 2 other people with me, then they were all like, no, this is not how it was.
Wild.
That's cool.
We have to go, Kara.
I know. At first I thought you meant we have to go. I'm like,
no.
Right now? Like, what do you mean?
Well, yes, right now. We're going
we have to go to
right
Eloise. Yes, we do.
Well, you know what? Speaking of going, when you do go to Eloise, it's very important that when you leave, you have to tell the ghost goodbye.
Oh.
Have you all ever played with the Ouija?
I have.
No.
No, you won't do it? That's not...
No, my mom threatened to murder me when I was a child if I ever touched it, and I still hold on to that.
Your mother threatened to murder you. Is that a topic in therapy? Is that a...
Maybe. But listen, Lynn was like, we don't mess with these. She grew up in a very, very, very haunted house. And so she's like, we don't mess with these things in that way.
Interesting.
But I'm assuming it's like the Ouija board where you have to say goodbye. You have to close out your session.
Yeah. I think that's an important step anytime that you're communicating. To go back to like what you were saying earlier, Kara, like they get to know people and they establish a relationship. And it would just be like if you were hanging out with a buddy, a friend, or a family member, if you just did like the disappearing act where you just, you just leave without saying goodbye.
The good old Irish goodbye. It's my favorite move.
That is Zach to a T. No, you don't say peace. You just goodbye. You're out.
So, Kara, when Zach does this, do you think that this could be perceived as being rude or perhaps
I don't like this line of questioning.
Ill-mannered, maybe.
Yeah. And he knows never to do this with me because I'll be like my mother and I'll kill him. But yes, I think I get it. And they're just like, well, we're friends. I want to come home with you.
Yeah. So I think it's not only just kind of rude to do to something that you've been trying to establish a relationship with and trying to talk with, but also for some reason, spirits will follow people home. And I don't know why, right? I don't know if it's just like the stray dog theory where it just latches onto you and wants to come home with you. But, if you tell things not to follow you home and you say it with authority, they will listen. The plane of existence that we live in the material plane of existence. The material plane of existence was created so we can experience duality. This is our plane. This is our existence. We are the masters. These spiritual energies are just crossing some sort of veil to be able to have an existence here. And if we tell them with authority to leave us alone, to not follow us home, to go away, they have to listen. This is our domain. And I think it's really important to do that when you're done with a Ouija session or when you're leaving a haunted location. And I only had to forget to do this one time.
Oh, no.
And I had a very bad experience. Normally, I'm pretty good about this. I keep a bottle of Florida water in the car, and that's one of the things I use. Have you all ever heard of Florida water before?
Well, I didn't until I'm going to call him our friend, but our wonderful Tenny told me about Florida water.
Oh,
and
did
the
he?
candle that he was making.
I love Tenny. Tenny's awesome. Did you get a candle from him?
You know what? I really sadly did not, and now I'm regretting everything about my existence because I didn't. But I'm calling him my friend because we took pictures. So.
We got autographs. Great human being to meet in person.
I saw those pictures. It looks like you all had a great time.
Too much
we
fun.
did. But anyway, so Florida water, yes, he told me about this. I didn't know anything about it until then.
Florida water is great. So like if sage is to the spiritual world what bleach is to a bacteria, then Florida water is kind of like a hydrogen peroxide. It gets the job done, but it's just not quite as strong. But to me, I think it smells much better than sage.
I love that.
So that's what I use. I have a bottle of Florida water that I take with me when I go places. And then when I leave, I do a little mantra. I say goodbye. I thank the energies and the ghosts for their time. Then I also say, you're not allowed to attach to me, influence me, follow me, come home with me. You either have to go back to your grave or you have to go back to the location from which I met you at. But you are not allowed to follow me home. I do that. I do a little bit of energy work, and then I just spray myself with Florida water, and I spray the inside of the car with Florida water and all of that kind of stuff. And that seems to work for me.
The time that you didn't do this, how did you know something followed you home?
It was very, very obvious.
Okay.
I think.
And do you know who it was that followed you home?
No, I have no idea. I have no idea who it was. Now, to be fair, I've always had kind of like weird stuff go on in my house. I think it's called an apport. Have you heard? Maybe I might not be using the right term.
That's when items move,
I've heard
right?
it that way, or just a port, right? Where they just
they just materialize in the house. That's a whole different story for another time. But I think
we talked about that on an episode, but I couldn't tell you which one it was. But anyway,
sounds familiar.
Yeah, I've had things just materialize in thin air and fall from the air in my house. Jewelry, pens, found weird stuff in the house. So there's already like something that I don't necessarily think it's the house. I think that there's just something with me, right?
It's you.
Some people. I think people who have some sort of psychic whatever or openness or willingness, I think they just attract things and things will follow them no matter where they go.
Why can't I have jewelry just materialize?
I took this jewelry to the pawn shop and it is costume jewelry. So whatever ghosts these are, they are not very...
They're not leaving the good jewels around.
No, they're not. But I did legit take them to like now it's cheap stuff. I took it somewhere and had it appraised. And they're like, well, where did you get this? I'm like, I found it in the house, So.
Oh my God.
So anyways, like I'm already used to like that kind of weird stuff going on and anyways, right? But the way that I knew that something followed me home is that after I got home from Eloise one night, and I didn't do any of my normal stuff, right? I didn't do any of my banishing. I didn't wash my clothes when I got home, nothing. I didn't even take a shower. And usually I take a shower when I get home. I mean, I didn't do nothing. I just took my clothes off, threw them in a pile on the floor and got into bed. And then later in the night, I woke up a couple hours later to the sound of my front door opening and then closing.
Oh.
And when that first happened, the first thing I think, somebody is in my house. Right.
Well, yeah.
So I get my sidearm and I check the house. There's clearly like nothing in the house at all. Doesn't look like the front door is messed with. But it freaked me out because I thought, like, is someone trying to break in or like what's going on?
Yeah. But
I got up, I checked everything out, and then I went back into bed and I laid down after I was sure it was nothing. And then I started to fall asleep. And do you know what it's like when you're laying in bed and then your partner will lay in bed next to you and you can feel the mattress push down?
100%.
Yep.
That is what happened. Something I could feel on the edge of the mattress push down, and then it pushed down close, and then it pushed in next to me. And I shot straight up out of bed, and I checked the whole house again.
Listen, you brought yourself home a little lady.
I don't know. Well, lady, guy, I don't know what it was.
Well,
I'm not here to shame the ghosts. But so yeah, I got up and I was like, oh my God, am I tripping? Like, what's going on? Then I finally went back to bed, and then I hear the door open and close again. And then something got into bed with me again, and you could actually feel the mattress pushed down enough where, because it pushed down and puts an indent, you slightly roll into the indentation.
Oh,
right?
No.
Ooh.
And then it pushed up against me.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, it's right. And then so after that, I got up. I was like, there is clearly something going on. So I got up. I did the Florida water. I put my clothes in the washer. I took a shower, and then the next day, I ended up doing a full out banishing.
Yeah,
I got all sorts of.
Listen, this person didn't know about consent.
No, they were like, maybe no means yes, right? Kind of that.
You didn't
Does
say
no
goodbye.
really mean no?
You got home, you took off all your clothes.
Right,
I mean, you basically put come on in.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's like it reminds me of Beetlejuice.
And then even when my kids were here over the last summer, they started reporting stuff in the house too. And I don't know if it was like poltergeist stuff. I don't know. Y'all heard theories of poltergeist with like psychic energy from young children and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it was that. I don't know if it was something that had kind of been slowly building up in my house or followed me home. Y'all are familiar with Hatman?
Yes.
You've heard of Hatman? Yes.
We did a whole episode, yep.
So my kids were like, my girls were like, I'm seeing stuff. There's something up in the bedroom. Then I asked them to describe it to me, and they describe Hatman. And then my son is talking about things pulling the sheets off of his bed, and they're talking about hearing voices. And then, so after that, I did another full banishing, but I did like hardcore full banishing with like ritual work and the whole 9 yards. And ever since that last full banishing in the house, I haven't had any issues at all. It's been super, super quiet here. But make
you always
sure you say goodbye. Yeah, you do now. Make sure you say goodbye. Make sure you tell them not to follow you home. So, little word to the wise, should you ever visit Eloise or any other location.
Good to know.
Or just, I think even when we were at Paracon, we met Nadine. Shout out to Nadine. And she was just telling us that even when we are done talking about our topics and having like, we're recording episodes and stuff, that we should also just like kind of do a goodbye, if you will, because it's like, you're talking about these topics and things that happen and people and things like that. And like you still can stir up some energy.
We definitely have.
We have. And she was like, you guys need to close out your sessions. And we haven't done that yet. Damn it. We need to get better at that.
I mean, I usually spray the sage at least before and after, and we have all the corners marked with tourmaline in the room we record in now.
We do.
So we've taken a few precautions, but we could probably do better.
We could, but
I've never thought about doing it after one of our chats, but I think that's definitely a good idea.
Absolutely.
Well, I think, like you said, even just talking about it, I think you're mentally opening yourself up to
for sure
to something,
for sure.
Right? Yeah. Poking holes in that veil.
Wow, this was incredible. Thank you so much.
I have laughed. I have gotten completely freaked out, and I just really want to go to Eloise.
Well, what our listeners are going to notice is that you and I barely spoke because we were just like in awe,
which neither of us are good at.
No.
Well, I didn't mean to like capitalize the whole conversation, but it was great to have this opportunity.
Thank you so much for being our first guest. Like, this is it. It takes some of the stuff we talk about at like such a surface level or the research we found online, but this gives us some more, validity and just expert knowledge in the field, not, us just
absolutely
talk about things we're interested in. I mean, you're out there doing the work all the time. So this was incredible.
This is crazy. So we need to go to Eloise, and anybody else in Michigan needs to go. Let's all go together. DM us.
Yes. Let's get a group.
Let's go.
The place is open for tours. If any of your listeners were interested in doing that, they could check out the Eloise website and get all of the information there.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll link it down in the show notes. Do you know the website off the top of your head, Adam, for our people who don't look at the show notes?
I'd had to Google it, but I think it's like EloiseAsylum.com. Maybe it's just a Google search away, as they say.
I'm sure it is. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. No, you were 100% correct. EloiseAsylum.com.
Okay. Yeah, and of course, the Halloween season is coming up, so they're going to be doing their haunted house kind of entertainment attraction, which is a great. Haunted house is like a multi-million-dollar Hollywood level special effects type of stuff.
No, I want to go to the real haunted stuff. I'll wait until after.
All right.
Is there anything that you want anybody else to know? Any socials where we can find you if you want to be found? Sometimes people don't. What do you want? What do you want? Do you want to be found?
If somebody would like to reach out to me, they're more than welcome to send an email just to my regular email address. I don't have like a special email address for paranormal stuff. It's adam.m.hachey@gmail.com, and you can put that in your show notes.
Okay.
But if anybody would like to reach out and talk to me about paranormal stuff, or if anybody would like help with an investigation, or if maybe somebody is experiencing something weird and creepy in their house, I would be very willing to have that conversation to see what I could do for folks. So yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I'm sure that you can tell by this episode that Adam is extremely intelligent and he knows what he's talking about off the top of his dome. He does not need to do all the research like Zach and I. So yeah, for sure. If anybody needs help or questions, guidance.
And you would be, as far as guidance, probably open to everyone, but as far as like helping with investigations, greater Detroit area or? Metro
Detroit area. If there was a really compelling situation a little bit further away, I would be willing to entertain that. But yeah, there's no place like home, so Metro Detroit is where I'm at.
Okay, Dorothy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thanks again. I don't even know what else to say. Just thank you so much. We really appreciate that. This is awesome. I know our listeners are going to enjoy this. Rather than just Zach and I rambling about stuff. This is just incredible. And yeah, this would be cool. So let's go. Let's get a group of people, DM us. Let's go to Eloise. Maybe we can make Adam come with us. And if you have any other questions, we'll put his email in the show notes. And I don't have anything else. Do you, Zach?
I think we're good to go. Let's wrap it up here.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, DM us. Give us, all the love on socials. Tell me I'm pretty. And most importantly, creep it real, you oddballs.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
You're gonna throw one in?
Woo!